Good afternoon and welcome to live coverage of St. George's Youth Parliament right here at the Grenada Trade Center Annex. I'm Ken Roy Batiste alongside June Paul. Good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Ken Roy.
Right, so the debate continues as part of the ongoing series of Parish Youth Parliaments. Of course, today is no exception, and the resolution today, be it resolved that the St. George's Youth Parliament fully endorses the Gaming Act of 2016 as a means of regulating the use of commercial gaming activities and as a means of protecting our young people. So no doubt, June, that is the resolution today. And much debate on this very topical issue is expected from the youth parliamentarians, both from the government and opposition sides.
Indeed, Ken Roy, we can look forward to a good debate this afternoon from the both teams. And as its resolution says, we anticipate good outcomes and we trust that all goes well in the best interest of our nation's youth.
Yes. So let's give you a sense of who's participating in the Youth Parliament today, St. George's Youth Parliament. Relative to the Speaker, Honourable Tariq Frank, the Clerk, Ms. Brondella Thomas, the Assistant Clerk, Ms. Joselle Waltress, the Parliamentary Clerk, Mr. Sean Thomas, and the Sergeant of Arms, Mr. Fidel Garway. Now, as it concerns members of the government side, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, National Security, Home Affairs and Economic Affairs, Honourable Member for Willis, Kada Joseph, Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Business, Honourable Member for Brizan, Jahim Franklin, Minister for Legal Affairs, Honourable Member for Vendam, Delisha Morris, Minister for Health and Social Security, Honourable Member for Grand Anse, Sheldon Dominic, Minister for Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts, Honourable Member for Happy Hill, John Parish, Minister for Social Development, Honourable Member for Woodlands, Nadisha Kutain, not forgetting Minister for Education, Honourable Member for Tantine, Brianne Thomas, and the other member of the government side, Minister for Tourism and Civil Aviation, Honourable Member for Laborie, Raquela Batiste. So a sense they are members of the government side as part of St. George's Youth Parliament. June will give us a sense of members of the opposition side.
The members of the opposition, we have leader of the opposition, Honourable Member for Dabo, Honourable Shakil Datshonik Griffith, Honourable Member for River Road, Honourable Priscilla Charles, Honourable Member for Caliste, Honourable Shakira Haynes, Honourable Member for St. Paul's, Honourable Lerona John, Honourable Member for Calivini, Honourable Samaria Charles, Honourable Member for Marion, Honourable Jade Glean, and Honourable Member for Munjaloo, Honourable Kelowna Andrews. And that's the opposition team who will be debating this afternoon, Ken Roy.
Absolutely. So in a few minutes, of course, we'll see the official start of St. George's Youth Parliament. Again, we're coming to you live from the Grenada Trade Center Annex. We are live on the Government Information Service, GIS, as well as Mikey Live.
Indeed.
So no doubt, we really appreciate you tuning in to this live. And you know, June, the topic today, the resolution specifically, just to go over the resolution, be it resolved that the St. George's Youth Parliament fully endorses the Gaming Act of 2016 as a means of regulating the use of commercial gaming activities and as a means of protecting young people. You know, that's a topic and an issue altogether which has been creating a lot of stir because there is a call for it to be regulated. Otherwise, you know, it can be left open.
Most definitely,
a lot
Ken
of
Roy.
undesirables can happen.
Most definitely, Ken Roy. As with everything else, we need to have some abiding rules and principles governing anything that we as a nation bring forward, whether it be in the interest of the youth, the old, or the middle age. But we must have rules and regulations that governs.
And to give you a sense of some of the government officials who have joined us today as part of this St. George's Youth Parliament, from my vantage point, I can see Honorable Gregory Bowen, of course, Honorable Kate Lewis, Minister with responsibility for youth development, she's here, and not forgetting the Permanent Secretary with responsibility for youth, Mr. Norman Gilbert. So they have joined us. And, you know, they've been really supporting this initiative, not just saying, okay, this is happening at a particular venue, but in fact they have been showing up physically to register their support to the young ones debating various resolutions.
Yes, Kenra, we have seen that throughout all of us a series of youth parliament sitting thus far. We had 5 in the series, and they have been very supportive, as you said, because again, the Ministry of Youth is all endeavors to work in the best interest of our nation's youth. Our policies, our mission statement, our vision statement speaks to that.
Absolutely. And so far we've had St. Patrick's Youth Parliament, we've had St. Andrew's Youth Parliament, St. David's Youth
St.
Parliament.
David's, and most recently St. Mark's.
Yes. And of course today, St. George's Youth Parliament. I understand coming up on the agenda will be St. John.
St. John, that will be on the 29th of June.
Right. So
Sorry, that's on the 29th of October.
Of October.
Sorry.
So that's next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Yes, next Tuesday. So you can mark your calendar and plan to join us on this live session as we bring to you a debate on various resolutions. Today, of course, we're talking the Gaming Act of 2016. No doubt next week, Tuesday, another resolution will come to the fore. We'll bring you up to speed with it later on. And of course, you can always join us to be up to date on what's going on, the involvement of young people. You know, since the very get-go of the very first Parish Youth Parliament.
That was at St. Andrews?
Yes. I was talking about, you know, young people in the national development agenda because, you know, June, it's so critical to get them involved. They too have a say.
A voice, yes indeed.
Yes.
Yes indeed. And the remarks or the issues that we as a nation have to face, the voice of the young people can be very, very forceful or powerful to assist government or policymakers in making the right decision. So we always seek to give young people a voice, young people an opportunity in the decision or the policy-making processes.
Are you familiar with some of the participants today?
No, I am not really familiar with them.
Okay. All right. So we are seeing the entry of the youth parliamentarians, both members of the government and opposition sides. They are entering the chamber. No doubt they will, of course, take their seats. And, of course, we'll see the entry or the entrance of officials such as the speaker, the clerk, the assistant clerk, and so on. And after that, we'll have the official start of the St. George's Youth Parliament. So any time now, any moment now, we will have the official start. Just waiting on the entrance of the officials to crung it, and we'll see the start.
Yes, indeed.
Let us pray. Guide, we beseech the Almighty God, members of this honorable house, that they may wisely deliberate for the good of the country and for the glory of thy holy name. Please join me as we say the Our Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Pray be seated. This honorable house is now in session.
I am advised by proclamation that the first Parish Youth Parliament of St. George's Parliamentarians duly appointed should meet and transact their business in this house on this 22nd day of October 2019. I am further advised by the proclamation that the affairs of this Youth Parliament will be conducted with wisdom, temper, and prudence, and that upon all occasions, the rights of all citizens and members will be respected and recognized.
Honorable members, I am not unmindful of the honor which you have conferred on me today in electing me to this highest of office, that of your Speaker and your servant. It will be my aim and duty to uphold the principles and traditions of this House and secure for each member the right to express his or her opinions within the limits necessary to preserve the decorum of this House. I pledge to recognize the rights and privileges of the honorable members and the House itself. I wish to assure you that I will preside in a manner which will facilitate the transaction of debate in an orderly manner, and above all, I will seek to be fair and impartial in the decisions, the rules of Parliament, and your self-interest to me.
Confirmation of minutes. Announcement by Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, let me now remind you of some key rules governing the sitting of this House. Be mindful of these rules and other standing orders before we proceed in today's sitting. I would take this opportunity to remind members of the gallery to put your cell phone on silent before we continue into today's proceedings. I would also like to remind the honorable members that this is a serious debate and should be taken sedate. This honorable House is for the people. You are given the mandate in which you should pursue and accomplish. Remember this as you go through your deliberation, ethically with integrity, serving all.
Resolutions.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to move the adoption of the resolution standing in my name. Whereas the Gaming Act 21 of 2016 was passed by the Parliament of Grenada and was brought into force on 1st August 2016. And whereas before the coming into force the Gaming Act of 2016, games of chance in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique were substantially unregulated. And whereas the main purpose of the Gaming Act of 2016 is to regulate the use of gaming machines and to overlook the conduct of lotteries and betting and gaming in general. And whereas persons or entities who intend to organize games of chance for the participation of the general public are obligated to obtain licenses for doing so in accordance with the Gaming Act of 2016. And whereas the Gaming Act of 2016 specifically prohibits children under the age of 18 years from entering the premises where gaming machines are used and from participating in games of chance in order to protect these young people. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the St. George's Youth Parliament fully endorses the Gaming Act of 2016 as a means of regulating the use of commercial gaming activities and as a means of protecting our young people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question proposed is that the Youth Parliament of the Parish of St. George's endorses the Gaming Act of 2016 as a means of regulating the use of commercial gambling activities and as a means of protecting young people. Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I greet you on behalf of my government, and we have no doubt that this Gaming Act 21 of 2016 is timely and long overdue. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my full support to the resolution put forward to this Honorable House, standing in my name. Mr. Speaker, through you, may I say that this legislation is important in saving us as young people of this country. We must commend our drafters for putting forward this legislation to regulate gaming activities in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, as Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, National Security, and representative of my home Annandale, I endorse this move. Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Act highlights key areas which would regulate and control the use of commercial gaming activities and serve as a safe haven to protect the lives of our young people. Mr. Speaker, while members on the other side may suggest that they do not see this act doing justice to the resolution put forward, I say to them, get your eyes tested, get a glasses or microscope or whatever it may be. Put on your thinking caps and read thoroughly through this act. Look again, read again, and think again. I firmly believe, Mr. Speaker, that if each member of the opposition keenly analyze and understand what this legislation is aimed to do, we won't be at this juncture here today. Opposition members, don't just read the act, interpret it. Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt that this move by my government provides an adequate system to controlling gaming activities, where there was not a system in place before. This legislation, Mr. Speaker, prohibits any and every person from providing gaming facilities to the general public. It requires one to obtain the appropriate valid license granted by yours truly, Mr. Speaker, on the advice of the Commission. Sections 5 through 7 of the Gaming Act underlines the establishment of the Commission, powers and functions of the Commission, the registration of licenses, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with enforcing the Gaming Act, the implementation and establishment of proper controls of not just those who will earn a machine or seek to have a license, but to ensure we continue to protect our future, our children, and generations thereafter. These people will become leaders of this nation. Mr. Speaker, we are trying to build a proper foundation with the right structure and putting in the right morals for young people. Mr. Speaker, Section 25 of the legislation states, permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
And I quote, subject to subsection 5 and section 35, subsection 5, every person who provides for gaming shall be liable to paying gaming tax. Mr. Speaker, the legislation also seeks to provide the payment of licenses and the payment of gaming tax as a percentage of gross receipts and governs how these activities should be conducted. Yet, the opposition is alluding that this legislation isn't a means of regulating commercial gaming activities. What then is it?
Honorable Member, are you still quoting?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. What then is it? End of quote. Mr. Speaker, after this debate today, I say to the members of the opposition, this too shall pass. Mr. Speaker, Part 5 of the Gaming Act provides the holders of license to pay a gaming tax and to keep records and make periodic returns in a manner which the activities involving gaming are conducted. This is contained specifically in sections 25 and 26, and Schedule 4 provides a rate for gaming tax applicable, Mr. Speaker. These mechanisms and guidelines in the Act and the regulations, SRNO 48 of 2018, when enforced, Mr. Speaker, provides a form of control of such activities which protects our citizens as a whole and prompts a sense of national security which is one of my fundamental responsibilities as Minister of National Security. Mr. Speaker, I don't think the members of the so ably opposition is reading the same Gaming Act 21 of 2016. Mr. Speaker, the opposition members are really insulting my intelligence. Mr. Speaker, I must say, in achieving all this, we need to play a pivotal role. Mr. Speaker, according to the Gaming Secretariat, states, and permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member,
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of clarity.
state your point of clarity.
At the beginning of the Prime Minister's debate, I heard her say that the act is here to protect our young people and enhance their life. However, I'm only hearing her speaking about the legislation and the economic benefits. I'm not hearing how we can protect or even enhance our young people.
Honorable Prime Minister, do you wish to clarify?
Mr. Speaker, I would say through you, Mr. Speaker, to the honorable member, that as my responsibility as Minister of Finance and National Security, I would have earlier in my presentation, Mr. Speaker, I would have given sections of the Act which speaks to licensing, and under the licensing sections in the Act, Mr. Speaker, you would get an overview as to who is entitled to a license. Persons under the age of 18 years, once applies for a license, it will not be given to you, Mr. Speaker. So I haven't gone into depth in it, but my learned colleagues here, Mr. Speaker, will explain the protection of minors, which falls under section 31 and 33 of the Act. May I proceed? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I must say that in achieving this, we need to play a pivotal role, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member,
Mr. Speaker, can you permit me 2 minutes to wrap up my presentation?
you have 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Secretariat states, and permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker, that the inspection of gaming facilities are done twice per year and spot checks are done periodically, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, the inspectors would not be at every area monitoring gaming activities 24/7. Also, Mr. Speaker, I must say to this honorable house, parents have their kids accompanying them to bingo. Schools, supermarkets, churches, you name it, all promote gaming activities. For example, raffle, promotions to raise funds at events during the festive seasons, and by extension allows our young people to participate in the gaming activities. This should not be. Therefore, parents, pastors, priests, teachers, holders of licenses, and all other members of the general public need to also look out for young people. When do you hear of these instances? What do you
Honorable Prime Minister, could you please take your seat?
Thank you, Mrs. Right.
I acknowledge the Minister for Education.
Mr. Speaker, I rise the second resolution put forward by the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, if you would permit me, I would like to clarify a few terms. 1. Regulating is to control and maintain the rate of speed so it operates properly. 2. Commercial gaming activities. It is the buying and selling of related gaming products. 3. Protecting. Restricts by law or preserve. 4. Young people. A person that's not fully developed. I will start my speech now. The Gaming Act, which was enforced on the 1st August 2016, was designed and implemented to protect underage individuals from financial exploitation, negative influences, gaming addiction, and the use of criminal activities amongst youth, which was brought about by greed-filled individuals. Mr. Speaker, studies show that 80% of the less fortunate are often the ones who are exploited financially. There's an old saying, permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
And I quote, "The poor gets poor and the rich gets richer." However, Mr. Speaker, this still doesn't justify individuals trying to manipulate and victimize our youth out of their parents' hard-earned dollars.
Honorable member, are you still quoting or you ended your quote?
I'm ending my quote. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, the people against this topic may try to convince you that there are flaws. However, Mr. Speaker, despite this, the Gaming Act still performs a valuable function. Part 7 of the Act clearly states, and I quote, "A person commits an offense if he or she invites, causes, or permits an individual under the age of 18 to participate in gaming," end of quote. Mr. Speaker, this subsection is dead on proof that the Gaming Act is a form of protection for our younger generation against the negative influences from our older and growing population. Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Act protects underage from a very rare gaming addiction, along with the Chinese proverb, which quotes, "If you must play, decide 3 things at the start: the rules of the game, the stakes of the game, and the time to walk away," end of quote. Approximately 4 to 6% of high school students are addicted to gaming. Furthermore, 10 to 14% are at risk of developing an addiction, which puts a turbulent strain on government resources. This indicates that more facilities have to be built, and to be honest, the financial resources we have is already insufficient to meet the needs of our secondary schools, the healthcare system, and the agriculture industry. Yet for all, Mr. Speaker, my opposing members still want to add gaming as another burden on our shoulders. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, imagine if the Gaming Act didn't exist. Do you know there would be a strong possibility in the increase of gaming-related crimes, therefore causing us to come up with creative and indulgent ways to educate the public on this matter? Australia's gaming statistics site indicates that there has been an 89% increase of gaming-related crimes. This is one of the reasons they implemented the Act. Owen Feltham, a famous English essay writer of the late 1960s, said, and I quote, "By gaming we lose both our time and treasures, 2 things most precious to man," end of quote. Therefore, as the Minister of Education, I stand strongly with this Act, for it protects the underage from financial exploitation, negative influences, criminal activities, and the use of criminal activities. I thank you.
Are there any other contribution to the motion? Honorable Member for Marion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, as representatives, we have gathered in this honorable House to discuss the endorsement of the Gaming Act of 2016. Permit me to define key terms within our resolution. Commercial, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is defined as a business intended to make a profit. Gaming, the risking of money in games of chance, especially casinos, is defined by Cambridge Dictionary. Merriam-Webster Dictionary also defines gaming as a practice of gambling. Regulating by the Cambridge Dictionary is defined as maintaining or controlling the rate of sounding. Mr. Speaker, fellow parliamentarians, citizens of Grenada, the laws of our land are for the protection of what we believe is moral, our distinction between right or wrong, good or bad behavior. Laws must respect the morals of the people as it shows their beliefs. Gambling goes against what we consider to be moral. Here are my reasons. Section A of the preamble of the Grenada Constitution affirms an acknowledgement of the supremacy of God. Section B advocates that spiritual development is of supreme importance to our existence and that we desire to serve that end with all our strength and resources. An example of gaming activity is gambling. Gambling goes against the authority of God and the church in its entirety opposes it. Where were those who represent the church when this act was passed? The ones elected and selected to represent those who believe in a superior being? Our aspiration for spiritual development can be hindered due to these commercial gaming activities. Advertisements, flyers, posters are prominent factors of influence gaming. These advertisements do not advocate that you go to church. Instead, they advocate that you take part as soon as you become 18 in vice and immoral act. Isn't that a disrespect to our morals and beliefs? Why doesn't the Act regulate advertisement also? The Gaming Act of 2016 was created for the regulation of the use of commercial gaming activities, but yet we have people becoming addicted. How is it regulating use and addiction if addiction is on the rise? Or does it just regulate the administration and structure of gaming? Nowhere in the Act does it control the use of commercial gaming for the persons actually taking part in it. With regards to a mother earning, for example, with regards to a mother earning $500 salary and spending it all or the majority on lotto or to play bingo, what regulations are put in place to prevent this? What about her children who will suffer due to the lack of money? How does the Act cater for them? Young people is defined by the Gaming Act of 2016 as an individual under the age of 18 years old. The Act claims to be a means of protecting these young people. I ask this question again, how does it do that? The only protection this Act offers for young people is to prohibit individuals under the age of 18 from entering gaming facilities. But Mr. Speaker, that in itself is ineffective because these gaming activities are thrown at us. These advertisements create a curiosity that influences the behavior of the youths, and their spiritual nurturing can be hindered as well. We are not allowed to go to gaming facilities, but no need because they are brought to us. Everywhere we look, every creek, every corner, every junction, I'm blasted with these blast signs. As with other young persons, curious to know what is behind those signs. So by the time I get to 18 years, I am ready to blast off to find out what is behind these doors. This brings me to my last point, Mr. Speaker. The Gaming Act discriminates against locals. Though I don't support commercial gaming, this act does not allow equal opportunities to its own people. Local gambling in shops are now illegal, but yet these commercial games in big entities have been regulated and legalized. How is this fair? How does the act cater for the local businessman, or it doesn't? Mr. Speaker, my points enlisted here today goes to show that gaming activities and the Gaming Act of 2016 is irrelevant and ineffective. It does not cater for young people as it claims. It regulates the use of commercial gaming activities partially. Mr. Speaker, permit me a minute and 30 seconds to proceed, please.
Honorable Member, you have 30 seconds to wrap up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It regulates the use of commercial gaming activities partially. So why fully endorse an act that is partial and does not benefit us? Gaming activities should not have been regulated, but equally outlawed because it's ineffectual, futile, and inadequate. I rest my case.
Honorable Minister for Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon to my fellow colleagues, members on the opposition all. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this resolution put forward to this Honorable House. Be it resolved that the Gaming Act should be approved. Mr. Speaker, figures have shown that my government who initiated this gaming sought to support these recreational games for persons above the age of 18, improving their quality of life. This, of course, will increase their potential to produce positive health benefits Mr. Speaker, gaming promotes healthy benefits. Research has shown. My dear colleagues, Minister of Health can assist with this. Mr. Speaker, one of the benefits that stands out in relation to this act is that gaming improves the quality of this life full-grown adults. The act in no way supports the exploitation of young people. Mr. Speaker, gaming helps exercising the mind and keep one active, contributing significantly to
Honorable
physical
Member from
fitness.
Monjalu,
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of order.
state your point of order.
My fellow opponent is reading.
Honorable Member, I notice that you have been reading. Could you please refrain from reading? You may refer to your notes.
Mr. Speaker, I show that after a comparison between the amount of aged people before the blast machine came into play and now, you will agree that more of our middle-aged population are engaged in physical activities more than middle. This is a result of the gaming activities, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, gaming is a popular leisure activity. According to a survey by the National Research Bureau, Aqualand University of Technology and Ministry of Health, New Zealand, 40 to 80% of the people over the age of 60 has participated in some of our gaming activities, some parts of either their life. Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Social Development, I inform this Honorable House that the Gaming Act of 2016 rightfully says, please allow me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
A person who provides facilities for gaming to brethren commits an offense, reliable on summary conviction to imprisonment for 12 months or a fine of $100,000, or both unless the person have a valid license and is providing the facilities in accordance with the license. End of quote. Mr. Speaker, subsection 7 in the Act says, a person providing facilities for gaming if he or she invites others to engage in gaming in accordance with arrangement made by him or her. It provides, operates, administers arrangements for again by others, manufactures, supplies, install, or adapts gaming. Software manufactures, supplies, imports, install, adopts, or repairs a gaming machine, or it is in possession of the gaming machine.
Leader of the Opposition,
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of clarity.
state your point of clarity.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member for Monjalu is stating subsection 7, but which section are you speaking of? I'm lost.
Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking about 27. To end this, Mr. Speaker, one of the critical things I wish to highlight as the Minister of Social Development, Mr. Speaker, permit me to have at least 1 minute.
You have 10 seconds to wrap up.
This act seeks to address, and I know sometimes addressing the issue of social matters can sometimes be difficult to address, but this act seeks to put structure in place to protect the young people in our society. I think, therefore, that this must be highlighted and commended as a critical component of the legislation. Really?
Honorable Member, your time has expired.
13 seconds, really?
Any other contribution to the motion? Honorable Member from River Road.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The name of this act speaks for itself. It's a game, a formality on paper to protect the big boys. Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Act has several gaps. It is ill-written, no system of reinforcement, nor does it protect our young people. Who are we referring to as young people? The rear of this resolution brought forward by the Prime Minister states that the Act is here to protect our young people. However, I beg to differ. Mr. Speaker, I am confused. The Gaming Act of 2016, who is it meant to protect? My confusion lies mainly with the definition or the lack thereof within the Act. Permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
According to World Health Organization 2019, and I quote, young people are between the ages of 10 to 24, end of quote. With this being said, Mr. Speaker,
Honorable Member,
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of clarity.
state your point of clarity.
Mr. Speaker, how can the Honorable Member for River Road refer to the Gaming Act as a game when it is the law that protects our land?
Honorable Member,
through you, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, I did not refer to the act as a game. I refer to the name of the act. It's a game. That's the name. It's a game.
but Honorable Member, it was an act passed by Parliament.
I apologize, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
You may now proceed.
Mr. Speaker, with this being said, I strongly go against the resolution brought forward today. This act is aimed to provide penalties and guidelines for organizations such as NLA and other entities to follow. Permit me to quote again, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Section 32, subsection 1 states, and I quote, a person who invites or permits an individual under the age of 18 years to enter the premises on which there is a participation in gaming commits an offense and is liable to a summary conviction of imprisonment for 6 months or a fine of $50,000 or both, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, this section is basically saying that the entity or the person that brings someone under the age of 18 into a gaming company will be fined. But there is nothing that states the protection of the young people. I'm not speaking about the protection of someone's image, the protection of our young people, Mr. Speaker. To me, this act is only to protect the government.
Honorable Prime Minister,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member for Calavini, River Road, Calavini, the Honorable Member for Calavini, through you, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member made statements.
Honorable Prime Minister, what point are you standing on?
Point of clarity, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry. Point of clarity. She made mentions of NLA and entities. I would like to know what entities is she speaking to? What other entities are you speaking to? Thank you, Mr.
Honorable
Speaker.
Member, do you wish to clarify?
I'm speaking about NLA and Blast.
Mr. Speaker, if I may edify this honorable house, the Gaming Act does not only speaks to NLA and other entities, Mr. Speaker. May I, Mr. Speaker?
You can say whether she clarified your point or not, but you're not given the opportunity to do a second speech.
Okay, thank you, Speaker. I will do so in my closing remarks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, Honorable Member.
This act does not have a system in place to prevent our young people from entering a gaming entity. If there was a system in place, there should be form of identification before entering a gaming entity. With this, we can help prevent certain social ills such as gaming addiction. Mr. Speaker, can you permit me to quote again, please?
Honorable member, throughout the rest of your speech, you can quote. Don't ask me permission.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to addiction.org, gaming addiction is the inability to stop gambling, especially when one, losses takes a toll on relationships, their career, and their families. End of quote. Our young people will start having habitual money problems, declining grades, spending less time with their families and their friends. Mr. Speaker, they would even engage in illegal behaviors to maintain their habits. Can you, the government, imagine Grenada with a much higher crime rate among our young people simply because they want to engage in gaming activities that has now become an addiction to them? All in all, Mr. Speaker, I believe that the Gaming Act of 2016 needs to be omitted, or better still, it needs to be properly revised for the simple fact that it does not benefit our young people. We need to put more focus on important things as to the development of our young people through training for various developments and job opportunities, and also for their social development. This act is made out to protect the faces of the entities and the government while neglecting the social needs of our young people. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other contribution to the motion? Honorable Member from Happy Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In all our lives, there is a fall from innocence, a time in which we are never the same. Is gaming addiction similar to addiction of heroin or cocaine? I wonder. Mr. Speaker, the act is one with numerous loopholes, not to mention the effect it has on the lives of our young people and the education we somewhat seem to care about. I mean, we acknowledge the fact that it boosts our economic system, but take a look around, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the proposition of which I am supposed to be a part of claims to have our country's best interests at heart. I'm here to clear the foolishness that the members of my government has plastered in your head and to fill with some sensible information. Gaming has its pros and cons, but I'm sorry to say our pessimistic behaviors far outweigh the good. Mr. Speaker, permit me to address the most common behavior occurring in our era relating to gaming. Allow me to enlighten my fellow colleagues. Many are faced with a significantly proven mental illness called
Honorable Member from Monjalo.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on a point of clarification.
State your point of clarification.
Mr. Speaker, I would like my fellow colleague to clarify whether he's opposing or proposing to the moot.
Honorable Member from Happy Hill, could you please clarify?
Mr. Speaker, I think I was quite clear when I said the proposition of which I'm supposed to be a part of. I am opposing the moot, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, Honorable Member.
Gambling, my dear colleagues, is a form of gaming, and as my previous member had mentioned, gambling is now known to be a form of recreation. The consistency of using gaming machines and playing lotteries can interfere with the human mind. Whether now or in the near future, gambling addiction can happen to anyone through their life. It can go from a fun, harmless diversion to a more brutal obsession which impacts their family, their health, their faith, Mr. Speaker, and along with other things I won't mention, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you will permit me to quote.
Proceed, Honorable Member.
Mark 8:36, and I quote, "For what it profit a man to gain the whole world and loses his own soul?" Whether you bet on sports, scratch, end of quote, Mr. Speaker. Whether you bet on sports, scratch cards, playway, pick tree, poker, slot machines, it can strain your mental health, interfere with your daily life, Mr. Speaker. Take, for example, the stress of thinking, boy, I wonder what number to play today. And even to hear passengers on the bus transport saying, boy, I go play dog. I saw a dead dog by the road. This addiction can lead to you being paranoid. Things you normally see on a daily basis will have some type of influence on your decision. Persons may also continue to play despite of the loss with hope of winning to make up for what they have lost previously. Allow me to add clarification to my previous statements. Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Unquote. We don't have to gamble every day to have a gaming problem. A problem gambler may gamble frequently or infrequently. Gambling is a problem if it causes problem. End of quote.
Honorable Member, your time has expired. Do you wish for more time to finish?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. 30 seconds will suffice.
Honorable Member, you have 15 seconds to wrap up.
Another issue is that students are using their loans to gamble. Again, it's not assured that every time you gamble, you are going to get more than you came with. In most cases, you'll lose more than you came with. Mr. Speaker, we claim to be a country of this.
Honorable Member, can you please take your seat? Your time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member from Monjalu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the opposition somehow got my speech, and I refuse to let my speech be read, or not read, but debated in that kind of manner. Please permit me to debate my speech.
Honorable Member, Happy Hill, could you please turn off your mic? Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In all our lives, there is a fall from innocence, a time after which we are never the same. Is gaming addiction similar to something like crack or heroin addiction? I wonder. Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Act is one with numerous loopholes, not to mention the effect it has on the lives of the young people, even the education we so somewhat seem to care about. I mean, we acknowledge the fact that it boosts our economic system, but take a look around in today's society. Mr. Speaker, the proposition claims to have our country's best interests at heart. Yet, for all, we are here today debating the legalization of the Gaming Act and whether or not it is a means of protecting our young people. I'm here to clear the foolishness that the proposition has plastered in your head and to fill your head with some sensible information. Gaming has its pros and its cons, but I'm sorry to say that our pessimistic behavior far outweighs.
Honorable Member, I'm a bit confuzzled sitting in my chair because it's like I'm hearing this same speech repeated twice.
Mr. Speaker, at the start of my speech, I clarified that the opponent somewhat got my speech, and I refused to let my speech be debated like that. So I asked for permission, and you allowed me to read it, to debate it.
Honorable member, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, permit me to... Mr. Speaker, permit me
Honorable
to...
Prime Minister,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of clarity.
state your point of clarity.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable members, through you, Mr. Speaker, stated that we're here today legalizing this act. But, Mr. Speaker, the act has already passed since 2016. I would like to know which act she's referring to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, do you wish to clarify?
No, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me to address the most common behavior occurring in our era relating to gaming. Allow me to enlighten my fellow opponents. Many are faced with a scientifically proven mental illness called the gaming addiction. Gambling, my dear opponents, is a form of gaming, and as my previous member had mentioned, gambling is now known as a form of recreation. The consistency of using the gaming machines and playing lotteries can interfere with the human mind. Whether now or in the near future, gambling addiction can happen to anyone through your walk of life. It can go from a fun, harmless diversion to an unhealthy obsession with serious consequences. And let me remind you, my opponents, that in the word of the Lord, it is stated in Mark 8:36. Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote.
Proceed.
And I quote, "For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul?" End of quote. Whether you bet on sports, scratch cards, playway, pick three, poker, or even slot machines, it can strain your mental health, interfere with your daily life, and lead to an overall disaster. It is not guaranteed that each time you play or you bet, you're going to receive an award. The stress of thinking, boy, I wonder what to play tonight, and to even hear the passengers and the bus transporters. Boy, I dreamed 365 last night, and I playing that. Sometimes even, boy, I dream a dead dog. Is dog I go play. This addiction can lead you to being paranoid. Things you normally see on a daily basis will have some type of influence on your decision to play. Persons also continue to play despite their losses with the hope of winning to make up for what they lost previously. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the foundation of the gambling cycle. Allow me to add clarification to my previous statements. Mr. Speaker, allow me to quote.
Proceed.
Open quotes. You don't have to gamble every day to have a gambling problem. A problem gambler may gamble frequently or infrequently. Gambling is a problem if it causes problems. End of quote. And the addiction of gambling doesn't only arise in the case of being weak-willed, irresponsible, or unintelligent, but in fact, gambling problems affect people of all levels of intelligence and all backgrounds. Responsible and strong-willed people are just as likely to develop a gambling problem as anyone else. Mr. Speaker, if we take a look around at our young people today, they are known to be very cunning and smart. They think out of the box. They go the mile to get whatever they desire. For example, a 15 or 16-year-old can contact a love or close one to purchase a lottery ticket or a playway ticket for them to play. In this case, the underage citizen is not presenting a fake identification card. He or she is not sneaking in. They're simply just asking a favor from someone. Loopholes like these are the ones that are not being covered in the Gaming Act. We must pay keen attention to the way in which the young people in this generation thinks. If this practice is continued, Mr. Speaker, permit me 5 minutes, please.
Honorable member, 5 minutes, you say?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, you have 30 seconds to wrap up.
We must pay keen attention to the way in which the young people in this generation think. If this practice is continued, it can interfere with their education, because now their main focus is on winning a prize or gaining a reward, and is no longer on attaining a decent average. Now this is what I need some clearance on. Mr. Speaker, we claim to be a country that is of and in God, but yet we are legalizing an act that isn't of God. Sell me your point, my opponent.
Honorable members, before we proceed, I disapprove of any speech being read twice in front of me. Remember the words that I said before in my announcement. Ethically, with integrity, serving all. Is that ethical? Any other contribution to the motion? Honorable member?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote,
Proceed.
and I quote, "A gamer is nothing but a man who makes his living out of false hope." End of quote, by William Buliso. Mr. Speaker, I strongly support the resolution presented before us. How can the members of the other side stand here, sit there and say that they're against this act? As I listen to their presentations, I'm wondering if we read a different legislation. Mr. Speaker, it's an honor for me to expose the opposing team's opinion as pure lunacy. As the Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, I am not only responsible for the formation of national policies and programs and for the regulation of civil aviation, I am also responsible as a leader to protect the youth of this nation. Gaming is directly linked to negative social and even mental health issues. Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I quote, "According to Royal College of Psychiatrists, problem gamblers, more likely than other people, suffer from low self-esteem, develop stress-related disorders, become anxious, have poor sleep and poor appetite. They develop substance misuse problems, and they suffer from depression." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, if this terrible indictment does not scare the entire Honorable House, I don't know what else will. Pathological gaming, Mr. Speaker, is an addiction, and all addicts are slaves to their addictive behavior. I therefore submit, Mr. Speaker, that the Gaming Act of 2016 protects minors from self-destruction, low self-esteem, anxiety, poor sleep and poor appetite, substance abuse, all because of stress-related pathological gaming. In gaming, there's approximately a 1 in 6 chance of a win. Furthermore, a gamer will do anything, I repeat, anything, to gain the resources to get his fix. Consequently, delinquency and crime results. Robbery, drug trafficking, even murder, Mr. Speaker. Permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
And I quote, "The Journal of Gaming Studies, 1994, also states, the consequences of pathological gaming are severe," end of quote. There is impaired relations with family and friends and financial breakdown, and gamers attempt to support the habits. Mr. Speaker, this Gaming Act must be upheld. The exposure of our youth to yet another vice must be fought against tooth and nail. Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, underage players, besides losing hard-earned cash given to them by parents and guardians towards the necessities of an education, which, by the way, is dumb and unconscionable, will be wasting valuable hours playing a game of loss. This time can be put into use of studying, thus on improving academic performance, which translates to further success. Having offered the foregoing arguments, Mr. Speaker, I therefore give full backing to the passage of the Gaming Act of 2016. Thank you. I rest my case.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other contribution to the motion? Honorable Member from Mosquito Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member, could you please turn off your mic?
Sorry, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please allow me to quote the last paragraph of the resolution brought forward by the Honorable Prime Minister. And I quote, "Now therefore, Be it resolved that the St. George's Youth Parliament fully endorses the Gaming Act of 2016 as a means of regulating the use of commercial gaming activities and as a means of protecting young people. Mr. Speaker, end of quote. I have read this act back and forth, thoroughly, multiple times, and I must admit, this is a very amazing act, a strong and a solid act. It creates a safe haven for our country to gain income without moral compromise. However, the resolution is where the conflict lies. If we were to align the resolution alongside the act, they will fail to coincide. There will be inefficiencies between them, simply because the resolution is stating that the act protects our young people when the act itself has no protection for persons 18 years and over. The government keeps preaching about youth development and protecting our young people, and yet speak of a statement, but not even speak, Mr. Speaker, but has put in writing a statement that is only halfway of the truth. But I am not here to criticize. My team and I has come here today to put a solution on the table because we do care about our young people.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand again on a point of clarity.
State your point of clarity.
Through you, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member made mention that the resolution only refers to as a means of protecting young people. However, Mr. Speaker, the resolution put forward also speaks to as a means of regulating the use of commercial gaming activities. So there are 2 points here on the table which we're discussing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have done my research, and according to the International Lotteries and Gaming Addiction Rehabilitation website, in 2018, there has been a record of 700,000 young people in the Eastern Caribbean alone being addicted to national lotteries and gaming machines. 98% of that 700,000 are between the ages of 18 to 21. This to me speaks volume.
Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of clarity again.
Please Please state your point of clarity.
Okay. So, Mr. Speaker, the member spoke of the percentage of addiction. I would like to know what is Grenada's, tabs on that percentage. How much percentage is Grenada? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable member, would you please clarify?
The percentage of Grenada is 70%.
Where was this information gathered?
It is from the Gaming Addiction Rehabilitation website.
Proceed, honorable member.
Thank you. The gambling addiction is as dangerous as alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and sex addiction. Hence, the legal age for gaming should be moved from 18 to 21 years. Because this group obviously needs a protection the most. Let's be realistic here for a minute, Mr. Speaker. The average Canadian 18-year-old is either still in secondary school, just going to TAMCC or university, or just entering the workforce. They are just paving their future. They are just starting to make responsible decisions. And they are too underdeveloped, just as the Minister of Education has stated. Mr. Speaker, do we really want the risky and reckless decision made available and all alluring to them? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has stand and made a statement about how many of those taxes that the NLA, Blast, and Bingo has brought into the country. But how much of those taxes are being invested in youth development, and how much of those taxes are being invested in reversing the damages caused by these gaming activities? Mr. Speaker, the resolution is strictly telling us that the Gaming Act protects young persons in our country, when in fact it makes no provision to protection for our people 18 years and over. I must admit that this act is doing its best to control our retailers, but there is a conflict in the resolution that needs to be solved immediately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other contribution to the motion? Honorable Member for Grandans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to fully support and put forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to fully support the resolution put forward in this House. As Minister with the responsibility for health, I would like to edify this House on some of the clauses in the Act that will justify that this Act as some means of regulating gaming activities in Grenada and protecting our young people. Mr. Speaker, as Minister of Health, I cannot want to blow this out of proportion and cause them to raise the pressure and cause an epidemic. Mr. Speaker, some schools believe that gaming activities affect mental health. But Mr. Speaker, I have never heard of anyone becoming mentally ill because of gaming activities. Mr. Speaker, Clause 1 to 4 simply provides a short-term title, but the commitment in particular, and speaks to the scope of the application and its context in relation to the National Lottery Authority Act and Gaming Act, sorry. And as to where in particular what activities this Act seeks to regulate. In Clause 3 provides in interruption of the previous definition of the various terms and three types of gaming relation under the Act. Mr. Speaker, another benefit Mr. Speaker, another benefit of gaming is it represents powerful economic development tools. What causes the sources of economic development are projects that largens regions' next exports. In other words, the only way income can increase is that the amount of goods is which are exported needs to increase, or the number of imported goods and services are Mr. Speaker, job opportunities for people. Mr. Speaker, according to Dr. Mark R. Dixon, a professor and coordinator and analysis therapy program of Southern University, conducts a research on gaming effects on young people, and the research which appeared in the research of journal Appeal Behavior and analysis shows that this hobby gives people more joy. Mr. Speaker, while in this process, probably you might lose. Oh my God! Sorry. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, while in this process, probably money.
Honorable member, compose yourself, relax, and drink some water. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while in the process, probably we might use money while gaming in these activities. But if you have fun doing so, what is the difference between losing $200 in gaming and spending $200 on expensive tickets for shows and sporting events? You still have fun. You still went home safe and satisfied. Mr. Speaker, if you can live without gaming but enjoy it, you're probably okay. If you're only gaming with money you cannot afford to lose, and with money you need to pay your bills and live on, Mr. Speaker, gaming has become more popular over the years. And some country like the United States of America and China has experienced a conditional growth in gaming.
Honorable member, your time has expired. Do you wish for more time?
Yes, please, Mr. Speaker.
How much time do you wish for, honorable member?
5 minutes is possible.
Honorable member, you have 1 minute to wrap up.
Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote.
Proceed.
And I quote, Minister of Tourism, Honorable Edmund Bartlett of Jamaica, the government is looking to position Jamaica as a major player in the Caribbean gaming industry. He noted that the country is, end of quote. He noted that the country is beginning to view as an important and interesting new market in the region. And once all the regions are in place, the industry will be fundamental importance to the tourism products. End of quote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. Any other contribution to the motion? Honorable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand here today to firmly go against the Gaming Act of 2016. Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Act is related to the regulation of the use of gaming machines, the conduct of lotteries, betting, and gaming in general. It is also stated in the resolution that the Gaming Act protects our young people. But, Mr. Speaker, gambling is an ever-increasing problem in our country and young people. Despite this profound and detrimental way in which this Gaming Act affects our society and individuals, it fails to be recognized as a severe psychological illness. It is constantly devalued by the government, who are captivated by the capital that is generated by this act, and therefore lessened regulations which ensured gambling, and there the difficulty it incurs escalates. Mr. Speaker, the growth of gambling in Grenada has been fueled largely by increasing public acceptance of gambling as a form of recreation. Mr. Speaker, this act claims to protect youth under the age of 18, but yet there is no supervision to enable this, since persons are able to go attend bingo without being checked for their age. Why is that, Mr. Speaker? It is true, Mr. Speaker, that the Gaming Act has brought economic benefits to some communities and people, just as there is no question to the problem that this act has imposed as well. Mr. Speaker, a problem gambler is characterized as someone whose insistent gambling has resulted in psychological, financial, emotional, and other difficulties to themselves and those around them. The impact of this addiction is unquestionably greater than the obvious financial losses. that can result from repeated gambling, and as the addiction progresses, the consequences can be devastating. Unlike alcoholism or substance abuse, problem gambling is not easily detected. Yet for the victim, it is just as uncontrollable. For those people, gambling is no longer a form of recreational activity or even an attempt to rationally balance risk and reward, but a serious problem. Gambling often goes hand in hand with other addiction. Mr. Speaker, a gambler may turn to drugs, alcohol, or even crime to find solace, unaware these will contribute to aggravate and existing problems, which will contribute to and aggravate existing problems. It is important to take heed warnings and place limitations within this Gaming Act, because if a casual drinker can turn into an alcoholic, a casual gambler can turn into a compulsive gambler. Mr. Speaker, the biggest view to see how this Gaming Act has negatively affected our country is to look at the government. Look and view how the economy is and answer for yourself if enabling this act can help. And I repeat, just like the alcoholic starts off as a casual drinker, it is very possible for a casual gambler to become a pathological gambler. Though this act may provide jobs for many Grenadians, it also has many Grenadians that do have a job. The basic argument that faces us is freedom versus right or wrong. That is up to us as individuals to decide. To conclude, Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Act is a menace to our society, deadly to spiritual life, and destructive to good government. Gambling destroys people who get entangled in its way before they realize it, just like drug addiction does. We may not be able to eradicate all gambling from our land, because, as Harold Smith once said, and permit me to quote Mr. Speaker,
Proceed.
gambling itself will only end when human nature has changed completely and there are no more bets to be won. End of quote. But we should be concerned about its effects and stand up against its expansion. The Gaming Act should be banned, or at least very tightly controlled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. You did in fact run a 100-meter dash. Guess the pitch was very hot. Any other contribution to the motion?
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of clarification.
Honorable Member, the Honorable Priscilla Chas, Honorable Member for River Road has already finished her speech.
Thank you.
Any other contribution to the motion? Honorable Minister for Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today humble yet eager to debate on this resolution at hand amongst my fellow colleagues and members of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, I am quite unsatisfied that the members of the opposition would go against this act. Mr. Speaker, don't you think that it must be mentally deranged? Mr. Speaker, as the minister responsible for legal affairs, I must say that I fully endorse and is in full support of the Gaming Act 21 of 2016. Mr. Speaker, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker?
Proceed.
And I quote, "One of the greatest liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change." And Mr. Speaker, today our very own survival depends on our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenges of change. End of quote. Therefore, with that being said, during the period of time preceding August of 2016, when the Gaming Act was not yet implemented into our country's sector, games were unregulated and uncontrolled or ungoverned during this era, and it was allowed to be played on any premises all around our country, including shops and clubs. These games were even played by minors or children under the age of 18 without any restrictions. However, since the implementation of the Gaming Act, things have changed. Children and young people are singled out as the vulnerable group who should be protected from being harmed or exploited by games of chance or gaming activities. And therefore, The Gaming Act prohibits all persons under the age of 18 to participate in any game of chance. This is outlined in the Gaming Regulations, Part 4, Section 60. Mr. Speaker, these regulations are so strict that it prohibits the advertisement of gaming activities within 500 feet of a primary or secondary school. So how can one sit here today and say that the Act doesn't protect our young people? Well, Mr. Speaker, I fail to understand their logic. Mr. Speaker, have you ever stopped for a second to think of how integral this Gaming Act or legislation is in regulating the sector? Mr. Speaker, well, I tell you, it is indeed an important part in regulating the sector. As the gaming legislation mandates that all persons or corporate bodies whose activities falls within the definition of games of chance is to acquire a license in advance of promoting their activities. So whether it's just a raffle or in a school or a church for a small token, or whether it's a big corporate activity or business like our National Lotteries Authority, a license is required. It is a mandatory requirement to have a license. Mr. Speaker, the question is, how can one obtain this license? Well, Mr. Speaker, as you heard from our Prime Minister, if a person is interested in obtaining a license, they are to send in an application to the Gaming Commission, who is then responsible for making recommendations to her regarding the approval and refusal of the application. Mr. Speaker, with all the evidence aforementioned, it is more safe to say that the Gaming Act is indeed a means of regulating the use of commercial gaming activities. Furthermore, the Act doesn't only regulate the use of commercial gaming, but it also protects the people participating in these games from being exploited. Mr. Speaker, the Gaming Act is strictly against exploitation. This is the reason why there are conditions and regulations to be followed when operating gaming activities within the Act. Mr. Speaker, if these conditions are at any time violated by anyone, that person can be convicted to imprisonment for 12 months or can be charged with a fine of $100,000 or both. In addition, all games should be conducted in a fair and open manner, and the gamers should be protected at all times. And Mr. Speaker, this is the sole purpose of the Act, to protect its people and our sector. I thank you.
Honorable Member, the race has ended. Are there any other contribution to the motion? Member for St. Paul's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand here today to fully oppose to this act. Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge that the Gaming Act boosts our economic system, but if we take a look at the young people today, we can say that they are more conniving and smart. They may contact a close friend and say, well, buy a play away from me now, or buy a scratch, I'll get the money when you come home. Mr. Speaker, I would like to know how this Gaming Act protects our young people. There are more privilege and opportunities granted for them to take part. Mr. Speaker, the resolution stated that the Act is there to protect young people under the age of 18, but no supervision is provided at such events. And when you enter the National Lottery Authority, there isn't anyone there asking for IDs.
Honorable Minister for Education.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of clarification.
State your point of clarification.
Honorable Member for St. Paul's, are you opposing or are you for us? Which one?
Honorable Member, would you clarify?
No, I'm opposing.
Proceed.
26% of young people have seen their parents or guardians gamble, and 60% of young people think their parents would prefer them to not gamble with no negotiations. Therefore, they are being influenced by the individuals around them So I say to you, Mr. Speaker, the Act cannot protect our young people. Persons under the age of 18 will be able to go into Wagiti Bingo to participate in the activities. But who is there to prevent these said young people from entering the premises? Mr. Speaker, I urge that the government carefully review the legislation. Mr. Speaker, Section 6 of the Act clearly outlines that the Commission has power to inspect that each retailer is following set rules, and this commendable inspection are done when a report has been made, suspicions has risen, or when it hasn't been done in a long time. Mr. Speaker, inspections should be done and video surveillances should be handed in on a monthly basis to the Commission for adherence purposes. This may be costly, but for the amount of money these retailers and government is making out of the market, this process is more than affordable. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any other contribution to the motion? Honorable Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in full endorsement of the resolution put forward by my government. I am baffled at the fact that the members of the opposition can comfortably stand here today to oppose this act. This tells me that they do not care about the youths of this nation, as the Gaming Act does serve as a means of protecting them and as a means of regulating commercial gaming activities in Grenada. I believe the youths of this nation need more protection from the opposition than from gaming, because they are here to oppose the act which protects minors from gaming activities. Before I get into the meat of the matter, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member for Marion asked how can the government cater for people who spend all their money on gaming. Mr. Speaker, may I edify this House that the government cannot dictate how individuals spend their money. Mr. Speaker, an entire part of the Gaming Act 21 of 2016, Part 7, clearly outlines the protection of minors through Clause 31, invitation to participate in gaming, Clause 32, invitation to enter premises, Clause 33, employment to provide facilities, and Clause 34, reasonable belief about a person's age. Mr. Speaker, as an honorable member of this esteemed government, it is of my interest, as well as the interest of every other member on my team, to protect the lives, to protect the lives of our young people. Even Clause 9, subsection 3, which speaks to licenses, states, permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
And I quote, the minister shall not grant a license to A, an individual under the age of 18 years, or B, a group that included an individual under the age of 18 years, unquote. Mr. Speaker, are the members of the opposing side still suggesting that the Act doesn't provide a means of protecting young people and regulating gaming activities? Mr. Speaker, as implied by the Gaming Regulations 2016, a license holder is not to allow an individual to access gaming facilities unless he is of the belief that the said individual is at least 18 years. Moreover, Clause 32, subsection 1 of the Gaming Act clearly states, permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Granted.
And I quote, a person who invites or permits an individual under the age of 18 years to enter premises on which there is participation in gaming commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to imprisonment for 6 months or a fine of $50,000 or both, unquote. Isn't this going to protect the youth of this nation, Mr. Speaker? Of course it will, because no Grenadian in their right mind is going to spend $50,000 for something that will not bring any monetary benefit to them. Hence, license holders will refrain from inviting individuals under the age of 18 to gaming facilities as they would not want to pay such a huge sum of money. Mr. Speaker, the same act also states in clause 33, subsection 1, permission to quote, Mr. Speaker?
Granted.
And I quote, a person who employs an individual under the age of 18 years to provide facilities for gaming or betting commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to imprisonment for 12 months or a fine of $75,000 or both, unquote. Again, doesn't this warrant protection of minors, Mr. Speaker? Doesn't this act speak the volume of the extent the youth of this nation is being protected as pertains to gaming? Mr. Speaker, after this debate, I believe the members of the opposition needs to get a checkup at Mungay Psychiatric Center, because you cannot tell me that they read the entire act, came across this bit of information, and still have the effrontery to oppose this act. No, something somewhere has to be wrong. I believe that they are too blinded by pride and envy to come to the realization that the act does serve its purpose in accordance to the resolution. They may even say that the enforcing of the law is flawed, but Mr. Speaker, they have to be mindful that there is always room for improvement, and as a government, we will ensure that relevant and necessary mechanisms are put in place to address this. As I close, Mr. Speaker, I would just like to leave with the members of this honorable House the words of Jean Houston, permission to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Granted.
And I quote, no matter the situation, let not your emotions overpower your intelligence, unquote. Mr. Speaker, I beg for 15 seconds just to wrap up my speech.
Granted.
Unquote. Instead, let us all, I repeat, let us all put our heads together to pave the way forward for a better Grenada. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We seem like we're shining going down to the end. Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, everyone. You cannot serve both God and money, saith the Bible. The Talmud condemns this act as a sin. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support my colleagues in demolishing this Gaming Act 2016 proposed by the government of Grenada.
Honorable Member for Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister,
Speaker,
sorry.
I rise on a point of clarification.
State your point of clarification.
I would like to know which part in the Bible the honorable member read that condemns the Gaming Act of 2016.
Honorable Member, would you please clarify?
Mr. Speaker, it seems like the honorable member is confused as to what he's speaking about. The Bible condemns this act. Hebrews chapter 13 verses 5, 1 Timothy chapter 6 verses 10 condemns the love for money.
Honorable Member, was it act written in 2016? Was the Bible, written in 2016?
Mr. Speaker, I think you all have me confused. Mr. Speaker, I said the Bible condemns this activity as a sin, not this act. I'm not crazy, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Member, you just clarified this statement. Please continue.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. This act is clearly a business deal between the government of Grenada and the National Lotteries Authority. Mr. Speaker, why solely I speak of the National Lotteries Authority? The famous philosopher once said, as I quote, Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote?
Granted.
Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweeter. Mr. Speaker, I beg your indulgence as I unfold this misery. The growth of legal gambling in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique in recent decades has flourished largely. End of quote, Mr. Speaker. Has flourished largely by increasing public acceptance of gambling as a form of recreation and by the promise of substantial economic benefits and tax values for the communities in which gambling occurs. There is no question that legalized gambling has brought economic benefits to some communities, just as there is no question that gambling has imposed economic and social costs. The important question from the public policy perspective is which is larger and by how much. Clearly, to address this and related policy issues, the economic and social costs of pathological gambling need to be considered in context of overall impact that gambling has on our society. Sadly, many family members break down as a result of problem gambling, and children are the innocent victims, not only because of the emotional distress created within the home, but as often the loss of contact with their parents. With this in mind, it's clear to see that the issues and costs associated with many problem gamblers can extend far beyond this basic financial cost, and helping in the recovery of one individual will have such a wider positive social impact. Mr. Speaker, when we speak of the social economic status, Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote. The social economic status is
Honourable member, I did not give you permission.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker?
Permission granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can see. The socio-economic status is a social standing or class of an individual or group. It is often measured by the combination of education, occupation, and income. Mr. Speaker, this is classified in 3 categories. Mr. Speaker, we have the big boys on top, we have the middle class, and we have the humble Grenadians like we all in this noble institution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when I speak of the high class, Mr. Speaker, whom am I referring to? Mr. Speaker, I'm not referring to we. Mr. Speaker, the high class, when they're on top, they don't know what's going on with us in the bottom here, Mr. Speaker. They make rules and regulations for the benefit of them. Mr. Speaker, we represent the majority of the population, Mr. Speaker. When I say the majority of the population, Mr. Speaker, I speak of the young people. Mr. Speaker, the young people represents over 45% of our population, Mr. Speaker. This 45% represents 62,967 persons, Mr. Speaker, of a population of 112,158 persons, Mr. Speaker. This information was gathered from the world's elaboration of the United Nations, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me 10 minutes, please.
Honourable member, you have 3 minutes to wrap up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister speaks about the protection of minors in section 27, Mr. Speaker, but I want to guide her, Mr. Speaker. She must have not read the Act. The protection of minors is section 27. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, section 31, subsection 1 states that a person, permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A person commits an offense if he or she invites, causes, or permits an individual under the age of 18 years to participate in gambling. Further on, Mr. Speaker, they must have missed this. Section 32, subsection 2, clearly speaks of premises, permit me to quote, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, throughout the rest of your speech, do not ask me to quote, just quote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Premises on which tickets are sold for the purpose of a lottery conducted by the National Lotteries Authority shall be exempted from the application of subsection 1. Mr. Speaker, I'm astonished in sarcasm. Mr. Speaker, the Act clearly contradicts itself. Mr. Speaker, I advise my fellow opponents to go back to the Parliament and fix this Act and fix it properly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I beg your indulgence. Find it for me. No, again. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, when it comes to the governance of gambling, it is about establishing structure that can accommodate both rights and regulation, both market forces and a common goal. Mr. Speaker, we all know structure is a difficult thing to get right, but when we do get it right, it becomes a fertile ground on which our culture of good practice can strive. My question to my fellow colleagues is that the Gaming Commission a proper structure? I don't think so. Mr. Speaker, I have a few words from my fellow colleagues. Mr. Speaker, as I say, either you do it right or you do it over.
Honorable member, what tea did you have this morning?
Mr. Speaker, I had spicy.
Honorable members, let me please remind you that clapping is not allowed in this honorable house. Please contain yourself. Any other contribution to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed.
I want to thank all members of this honorable house for their contributions made towards this resolution this afternoon. I rise again to give my full support to this resolution and to say in summary, while there are varying opinions of the activities, I must say this is a step in the right direction. Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote.
Granted.
And I quote, "These activities needs to be regulated, prescribing where, when, and how those types of activities can occur." End of quote. As a member of St. George Northwest and Prime Minister of our beautiful island stated when the bill was tabled in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sometimes I wonder if common sense is really common after all. After listening to deliberations, Mr. Speaker, by the opposition, all I can say is, woy, woy, woy. Mohandas Gandhi once said, Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote.
Granted.
And I quote, "Anger and intolerance are enemies of correct understanding." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, I firmly believe this quote reflects the opposition in this honorable house this evening. The opposition lacked vision and creativity in analyzing the resolution before this honorable house. Mr. Speaker, if I may retract some statements made by honorable members of this house, the member of Marion stated that the act is not for locals. Mr. Speaker, if I recall my visit to the Gaming Commission Secretariat just last week, and the information was provided to me just yesterday, I was informed that anyone can apply for a gaming license. However, there are requirements that needs to be met. Proof of premises, financial statements, evidence of machines, submission of police records, and business registration. Mr. Speaker, I would also inform this honorable house that spot checks are done twice a year. And periodically, there are checks done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to edify this honorable house again, Mr. Speaker, that the Gaming Act of 2016 does not only speak to gambling. Come on, people, wake up. Y'all didn't read this act. Wake up. Mr. Speaker, I thoroughly went through the act, flipped it inside out. The act, the regulations, the regulations. And Mr. Speaker, I am happy to inform the members of the opposition that we all, on a day-to-day basis, participate in gaming. And I will tell you, Mr. Speaker, we go to supermarkets on Christmas time, don't we? They have promotions. We spend, they say spend 100 or more, you get a free ham, you get a free, all this is part of the gaming activities, Mr. Speaker. The churches, the schools, they have raffles, all these are parts of gaming, and our young people are participating, aren't they? Mr. Speaker, I don't think the honorable members analyzed the act thoroughly. Mr. Speaker,
I'm totally baffled. Mr. Speaker, the opposition alluded that gaming activities causes mental illness among young people and lots of social ills. Mr. Speaker, I asked them support evidence to substantiate the statements hearing Grenada. What statistics have you to show such is the case? Mr. Speaker, prior to gaming activities, mental illness was there, social ills was there. What are they trying to say? Social ills just surfaced because of such activity? Or it increased after gaming activities came along? Mr. Speaker, I never heard gaming activities allow people to kill anyone or to do any sort of social ill. Mr. Speaker, I never hear that yet. I never heard Wagiti said one of his patrons died because of playing bingo. Seems like Mikey Live or Ken, or I would have missed that. Mr. Speaker, I certainly await such autopsy. Members of the opposition probably had a spiritual death because they lost in a gaming activity. Members of the opposition, where is the lie? Where is the lie? None whatsoever. Mr. Speaker, I'll say again, I don't believe the opposition read the Gaming Act thoroughly and keenly interpreted it. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say to members in this honorable house, this act is not made in stone. Be open-minded. Lend support to the act by making creative recommendations as how we can address the activities as going forward. Haven't you all heard about amendments before? The act has about 3 or 4 amendments that were made since it was legislated in Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the industry will continue to evolve. It's an industry that's not stagnant in any way, and there is always going to be new approaches, new games, new avenues, and as such, as a government, we must make necessary adjustments and amendments where necessary when those challenges and solutions evolve. What is most important is that we continue to assess, evaluate, and make necessary amendments as those challenges and concerns arise. We continue to consult with persons involved in the industry. Mr. Speaker, are we protecting our young people? When you hear the deliberations made by the members of the opposition, I don't get it, Mr. Speaker. We are so double standard as a people, Mr. Speaker. Parents, Mr. Speaker, they go along with their kids in bingo, but yet we blame the act for not taking that responsibility. As parents, we have a role to play in the society, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's not lose focus. Let's not lose focus, Mr. Speaker. I say to this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, that this legislation is effective with proper enforcement mechanisms in place, and my government will work diligently to ensure that this is done. Mr. Speaker, I would like to leave this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, with a quote. Mr. Speaker, I asked for your permission to quote, but I didn't get a response from you, Mr. Speaker. Should I or shouldn't I?
You look confused, so I thought I was looking for your quote. Granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, permit me to quote Proverbs 22:6, and I quote,
Look.
"Start children of the way they should go, and even when they are old, they would not turn from it." Mr. Speaker, end of quote. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I again reiterate my support to this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Honorable members, the question proposed is that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas the Gaming Act 21 of 2016 was passed by the Parliament of Grenada and was brought into force on August 1st, 2016, and whereas before the coming into force of the Gaming Act 2016, games of chance in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique was substantially unregulated, and whereas the main purpose of the Gaming Act of 2016 is to regulate the use of gaming machines and to overlook the conduct of lotteries and betting and gaming in general, and whereas persons or entities who intend to organize games of chance for the participation of the general public are obligated to obtain license for doing so in accordance with the Gaming Act 2016, and whereas the Gaming Act of 2016 specifically prohibits children under the age of 18 from entering the premises where gaming machines are used and from participating in games of chance in order to protect these young peoples. Now therefore be it resolved that the St. George's Youth Parliament fully endorses the Gaming Act of 2016 as a means of regulating the use of commercial gaming activities and as a means of protecting young people. As many are in favor of the resolution be agreed, say aye. Those opposed say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes do have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg for a division of the House.
Assistant Clerk.
Division. Honorable Member for Willis, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
Yea.
Honorable Member for Brizan, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
A resounding yea.
Honorable Member for Vendom, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
An absolute yea.
Honorable Member for Happy Hill, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
Yea.
Happy Hill, can you repeat? Honorable Member for Woodlands, how do you
Yea.
vote? Honorable Member for Laborie, sorry.
Yea.
Honorable Member for Tantine, how do you vote?
Yay.
Member for Dabo, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
A resounding nay.
Honorable Member for River Road, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
Nay.
Honorable Member for Callis, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
Nay.
Member for St. Paul's, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
Nay.
Member for Calivini,
how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
A very boisterous nay.
Member for Marion, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
Nay.
Member for Monjolu, how do you vote on the resolution before the House?
A solid nay.
We have 8. The result of the division is... How much is it? How much is it again? 6 yes and 8 noes. Sorry, 7 yes and 8 noes.
The resolution has not been agreed. At this juncture, I will now invite the Honorable Gregory Bowen, Parliamentary Representative for St. George Southeast, to give a few remarks. We will now invite Senator Nolan Cox, Minister for Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts, to give a few remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to address this Honorable House this evening. Let me also recognize honorable members of the government side and the opposition side. I want to also recognize important persons in the gallery. Of course, we have our Deputy Prime Minister here and our Minister responsibility for youth, our Permanent Secretary for Youth, parents, teachers, well-wishers, the media. A pleasant evening. I must first commence by saying how pleased I am to be given an opportunity to be here and also to give some remarks this evening. I want to first commence by congratulating our young persons here who participate in this very important and development activity. I think it's commendable that you have taken so much time to prepare yourself on a very important and sensitive issue, and relevant, of course, within the scheme of things in Grenada, and not only Grenada, but the Caribbean as a whole. And so I think it's a very important topic, and this exercise is very much useful, and I want to commend you on your performance here this evening. I want to also congratulate the Ministry of Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts for keeping this activity alive, keeping our young persons engaged, and also not just engaged, but engaged from a legislative standpoint. These are the systems that are in place, which we are governed by, and it's important that we continue to keep our persons grounded in them. I want to kind of critique this evening's activity. When I got here and I heard so much reference was made to Enele and Blas, I said, as the minister responsible for a national lottery, seems like I walked into a trap this evening. But I want to say that both contributions on both sides were very good. I was impressed with a few deliverables and back and forth. It was very good. I want to critique the speaker. I think there was one thing that when persons stand, he didn't give you back your time, the person who was presenting at the time, which he should have. So, Mr. Speaker, make sure you give the persons their time. But all in all, I think it was a wonderful exercise. I also see that there was some persons on the government side not in support, also giving some realisticness to the parliament, what it's supposed to be and what can happen. There was a similar situation like that in Guyana recently, which resulted in Guyana having to go to the polls. So that, I think, is an excellent opportunity to present that as well and to see how persons dealt with that. I didn't hear the Prime Minister dealt with that colleague. Probably after Parliament, that colleague might be dealt with. I see a gracious nod, so I trust that. Oh, no, I just want to say I think it's very good that you guys are doing this. And I commend you, and I wish you all the best going forward. The ministry is there to continue to give you support. We are looking for various ways to continue to engage you, to help you develop, and for you to be better citizens and create more opportunities for you as we move forward. Just want to thank you and wish you guys all the best. A wonderful activity and pleasant evening.
I now invite our Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Gregory Bowen, Parliamentary Representative for St. George Southeast, to give a few remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm advised that the House is not formally adjourned. And as you recognize, I'm not only the position of Deputy Prime Minister, but I'm also the leader of government business in the House. And therefore, the practices in the House really falls under my jurisdiction. But let me start by complimenting you, the young people, for your wonderful performance this afternoon. And you note that I did not address my cabinet colleagues. They're in the gallery, and you do not speak to people outside the House or the Senate whenever you were in the system. The Speaker may do so. So it is not because I do not recognize my cabinet colleague. I just simply want to continue and to emulate the practices within the House. I am particularly pleased with the youthful age, and I discussed with the Minister for Youth in the gallery how young this team really is, you know, compared to others that I have seen, particularly at the national youth level. So all kudos to you, and you have done a good performance this afternoon. But I want to mention a little bit more of the parliamentary, you know, practices and so forth, and I won't repeat what the Minister for Youth has said, but that we stand ready, as from the national level, to impart further knowledge to you. So my colleague, the ministers in the youth ministry, could really count on us there to do that. The difficulty of the topics, you know, you're given a position, you either support or you don't support. When in your heart you may believe that you support it, but you're asked to come out with the arguments to go against it. This is of fundamental importance. It builds your argument, your prowess, in terms of being able to debate a bill. Because intermittently, the one should be counteracting what the other is saying. And in preparation, you would know when you reach to one side exactly how you will counteract the other persons. At the end of the day, as you realize now, it is a numbers game, as we say in the political world. No matter how good your arguments are, but at the end of the day, when the division is taken, division or no division, sometimes the opposition may ask for a division, but it may just show who supported, who did not support. But the numbers of the nays or the ayes and the numbers of the noes or the nays, that's what's really important at the end of debate and to your particular constituents. Because no matter how good you debate, but remember is you're building something for yourself. And even if you lose a debate, the arguments that you made will stand. And you could see arguments, you could see changes by the government or the powers that be, even if they would have won the debate. And what happened today with respect of parliamentary democracy? You heard one member on one side really going against the team. Now, in the actual world, this happens. In small countries like we have in Grenada, you have all the government sides and everybody more or less at a ministerial position. It is not good practice or ethics unless you wish to leave the cabinet that you go against it. But there are certain, in the larger worlds, you have what you call the backbenchers, those in the government and those in the party not in government, but who will be supporting the government. And these members, they're entitled to say whatever, you know, how they actually feel, because it is they and the constituents. And therefore, I am asking that we spend time in really educating the participants along the parliamentary practices and the constitutions of the various countries, in particular Grenada, the constitution that you sit in where you are sitting. So before you even pick up and come to debate, you must have a little backdrop in that. And let me compliment the organizers. You have started, and I expect that you will go from strength to strength. And surprisingly, I see that they have left us out. We know that the women are taking the forefront, but what is the percentage of male to female in this house? Is it 3 to 12? We're at 400%. It is good, it is right, but we have reached a stage, even where you are now, and I've indicated this before, that our young men are really being left behind. You know, in this country and in this region, it is not an issue where you're fighting so much for women's rights. But I want to repeat that the women have a fundamental responsibility, mothers and the sisters, to pull the young men along. At the end of the day, we have a society. Gone is a society where the men alone are working and they hold the powers to be. But when you want a good social fabric, you must have good, educated, sound, economically resourceful young men if you want to put the families together. I've seen it in the Imanis. I've seen it elsewhere. That is why we had to start the Empower program to try to pull the men along. So as you perform, particularly the young men again, the onus is on you with the help of your friends and your female counterparts to ensure that we have a structure where the society in Grenada will benefit in terms of the family network. So once again, let me thank you and thank all the persons who participated today. You have done a remarkable job. Just continue to learn and to build. As we say in the political field, you have made your maiden voyage, and in the parliaments around the world, whenever somebody gets into parliament for the first time, nobody challenges them. They could be saying good, they could be saying bad, and you could have a lot to pound the person, but you simply allow them to go. But be it known that the second time this person comes in to speak, he or she will have a rude awakening. So let us learn and let us continue to build Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now invite the Leader of the Opposition to give the vote of thanks.
Honorable Gregory Boyne, Minister for Works and Parliamentary Representative for St. George's Southeast. Honorable Kate Skeeter-Lewis, Minister for Youth. Honorable Nolan Cox, Minister for Youth Development, Sports, Culture, and the Arts. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you here today. Our esteemed judges, Jillian Thomas, Ruth Williams Charles, Michael Lewis, I say thank you. Thank you for coming here today, and our fellow parliamentarians. I want to it's really what I should say. I'm in full joy to see that my two fellow colleagues, along with the two fellow colleagues here, they're school children. And they did really, really great here this evening, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will just, Jada, stand and give a bow. You are really great. Kiana, you are really great. Rianne, you are really great. Raquela, you are really great too. Mr. Speaker, they are all school children. But Mr. Speaker, I want to thank each and every one of us here, young parliamentarians aspiring to be young prime ministers, I hope. Oh, I'm so sorry, and Lirana, stand and take a bow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also thank you for governing this honorable house. Our clerks, Ms. Joselle Waltris and Ms. Brandella Thomas, we also thank you. Mr. Anderson Gaskin, where are you? Mr. Alexander, our facilitator, where are you, sir? We want to thank you tremendously, not for myself, but to all of us here. You are indeed a help. And to our fellow audience, you are great as well. Mr. Speaker, we all came here, I should say, not knowing what we're supposed to do. when they first invite us to the youth parliament, in the preparation of the youth parliament, Mr. Speaker. Whew, I still say Mr. Speaker. Yes, not knowing what we're supposed to do, Mr. Speaker, but we pulled through. Mr. Speaker, I read this entire act about 10 times. Mr. Speaker, trying to understand what it really is about, just to say Mr. Speaker. Anyways, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to my parliamentarians, and our project manager, Ms. Aliyah Sween. Thank you. And thank you everyone.
At this time, I will acknowledge the parliamentary representative for St. George Northeast, Honorable Tobias Clement. And if he has any remarks, could he please come towards the podium?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and a pleasant good afternoon to each and every one. And I was just thinking that protocol already established, Deputy Prime Minister said its piece, so I might be very short here. In one sentence, I can say that from what I saw here today, I can safely say that Grenada are in good hands. And it is not too early for you young people, because maybe if I just go back a little bit in our history, when I first entered Parliament in 1995, probably I was just around your age. And she said she did not know. Maybe Honorable Brother Boyne will tell you that we did not know much at that time, but it's a learning experience, and continue to do what you do and continue to study the issue, ponder the issue, and make a difference wherever you are. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Tobias Clement. Before I adjourn the sitting of this House, I would like to thank my honorable members for giving me the opportunity to serve as your speaker today. I have learned a lot. I may have made errors, but that will be corrected next time. I want to thank you. I do believe that the general public would have got some clarity on the Gaming Act. Who did not know that an act existed will know that an act do exist now. Never doubt your abilities. Pursue your dreams, whatever they may be. I have no doubt that you will continue to make the world a better place. I'm confident that we will continue down the path of greatness, for today's choice equals tomorrow's destiny. Honorable members, the question is that this honorable House stands adjourned sine die. As members are that opinion say aye. As members are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. On the contrary, say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes do have it. The business of this youth parliament stands adjourned sine die.
All right, so we're into the final part of the proceedings, the conclusion of St. George's Youth Parliament. June Paul remains with me here as we bring you the aftermath of this session. What a debate. And I have to just say, June, just have to say,
Let's take a picture.
I think up to 4 of them,
Yeah.
if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
there were 4 of them.
Okay.
Yep. So we're very pleased.
I would like all of the parliamentarians
Stay with us
to
as we
come
bring
to
you,
the
aftermath
chambers
of St.
for your group
George's
photo.
Youth, Parliament. We intend to speak with the Speaker of the House, Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, as well as a few members on both sides of the House, government and opposition. Honorable Jaheim Franklin, Honorable Jada Glean, and Honorable Kiona Andrews. Of course, they will join us shortly for a conversation on their involvement. Of course, for most of them, first time in this kind of young people session, that kind of thing, this sort of national conversation. And so we look forward to having a one-on-one with a few of the participants today.
And for this, Kenroy, that is why we should actually congratulate them for that bold step they have taken. It is not easy to come out before an audience and do something like this, and in particular the students. We applaud their efforts, and I congratulate each and every one of them and wish them all the best going forward.
You know, one of the outcomes of Youth Parliament for a lot of the young people, the participants, they say to us how much it has changed their lives. It has made them more confident. It has given them a voice to express on issues. You know, before they were intimidated, before they were very closeted with their expressions, but they are now able to ventilate because, you know, they say to me, you know, they are being given an audience. And so it encourages them to express. So no doubt, Youth Parliament is impacting our nation's young people in a very positive way.
And Kenroy, that actually steps them it actually puts them one step closer, because many of them, after going through this session, they actually venture into the national parliament, which is actually good for them. So opportunities like those, we as a ministry seek to actually provide for young people, give them that avenue where they can make their mark in society and contributing thus to the economic development of the nation.
Right. Take, for example, the Speaker of the House today, Honorable Tariq Frank. In a previous session, he was a member of the government side, so he was actually debating a resolution. And today, he served as Speaker of the House.
Yes,
it
that
shows
is
his
very true.
versatility.
Indeed, indeed.
Yes, it shows what he's capable of doing. And I have to say, he actually delivered in,
Yes, he
in
did,
that
and
particular
he was very
role.
eloquent. He served well, and I think that experience and he was very knowledgeable of the topic as well too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, had good control of the House.
Yes, indeed,
Yes,
indeed.
yes. So we intend to speak with him as well to get a deeper understanding of who he is, a deeper appreciation for his role in Youth Parliament. And don't forget, we also intend to speak with the Prime Minister, the Opposition Leader, and a few members of both the government and opposition sides.
Kenroy.
So this is the very aftermath of the St. George's Youth Parliament, reminding you we are at the Grenada Trade Center Annex in Montrouge, St. George. Of course, we heard addressing the debaters, the Honorable Gregory Bowen, Deputy Prime Minister of Grenada. He graced us with his presence. So too, we saw the Honorable Kate Lewis, Minister with responsibility for youth development. Also, the Permanent Secretary, Mr. Norman Gilbert, is with us. He is the PS in the Ministry of Youth Development. So, no doubt, they are showing their support in a very real way.
Indeed, their commitment.
Indeed. And we're very pleased to have them as part of the mix. So once the debaters come into the fore next to us, we will invite them on set for a conversation because we really want to have that chat. Here comes the Prime Minister, Honorable Keda Joseph, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, National Security, Home Affairs and Economic Affairs. Good to have you with us. First of all, your impression of your performance today.
I think I did pretty well. At the beginning, I was a bit nervous, I would say, because yes, it's my first time doing Parliament, but debating, no. I've been debating since in school. So initially, I was a bit nervous, but once I got into the groove of it, it became easy. And I think everyone here gave a good account of themselves, and I must applaud everyone for that.
In what aspect do you think you really delivered today?
I think in terms of bringing clarity to the opposition, in terms of the act, because they kept referring to NLA, 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 when I know that gaming activities does not limit you to the gaming machines, slot machines. You have promotions at the supermarkets, gas stations. All these things are taken into consideration as a game of chance under the act. So I think that was my, I would say, strong point in bringing clarity to them in my rebuttal, because I think there was a misunderstanding of what was actually being discussed, and they kept focusing on just the young people in the resolution, where the resolution also speak to the regularizing of the gaming activity. So I think I gave a good account of myself, and I think everyone did the same, and I really enjoyed the experience, and I thank the ministry for giving us the opportunity to do so.
How has this experience helped to improve the person you are?
I would say, to be honest, as a young person, you know, as young people, you don't tend to sit down to read these legislations and all these things. And for over the past few weeks, you know, having to go back and forth, the Gaming Secretariat, trying to get a copy of the Act, trying to get a copy of the regulations, read it back and forth, trying to understand what really it is. It gives you a better appreciation as a young person as to what the Act is aiming to do. I must say, as I would have made mention in my presentation, this activity, gaming activity is evolving. It will not be limited to there. So we need to look beyond the scope of just what is in front of us and look ahead as to what possible may come up in terms of, so that amendments can be made to the Act, recommendations can be given. And I think, all in all, I think as a young person, I think I had got a better appreciation of the Act. And I think I would encourage young persons to read the legislations, because us in the Youth Parliament can make a difference in deliberations in government going forward, making amendments, and so we can make changes. So I must say, indeed, it was a good one.
My colleague June Paul is here. Feel free to chime in and get across your points.
Well, I just wish to extend congratulations to Keda again on that bold step. I mean, we spent some time together on various things in the past, and I commend you on the strides that you have been making, Keda.
Thank you.
Looking at you and your delivery, your style today, I think you were very eloquent. You stood out. You made a big difference, and I know you must have put in the effort. So if you would just speak to us a little about the whole research. I know it must have been an eye-opener for you in many ways.
Okay, so let me take you. Okay, initially, when I was approached for the Youth Parliament, I told them, okay, yes, I would participate. But when the training started, based on my some scheduled work, and I play netball, it was kind of difficult to attend the trainings, right? So initially they sent me the resolution. I looked at it. I said, okay, I would give it a shot. Whenever I don't have games, I would come. I would try to make myself available. It so happens that the rain fell there were a couple of days, because netball is Tuesdays and Thursdays, rain fell. So I got the opportunity to either go into class or information was shared to me. And then when I started going to class, I actually got a groove of things. I must say, the time we got, because initially we had started like about 5 persons. Every time new persons came in, Mr. Alexander had to go over the same thing over and over. So then, you know, it helped me as a young person in that he had to review those things, you know, it kind of stick. But in terms of like the preparation, it was really short space of time that all of us had. And for this level of debate today, I'm really impressed with the work everyone would have put in. The researching part of it, I would have got copies of the legislation and so through legal affairs. I also look at the SRNO for I think it was 48 of 2016 that deals with the regulations of this said act, because I didn't want to limit to just what the act says, but how does a regulation put forward in the enforcement of the act. After reading that, I went back and forth. I did research. I looked at other Caribbean islands, the gaming act, what does it constitute and all these things. And then I said, okay, let me start to put pen and paper to this. I went to the gaming secretariat. This was the hardest office I think I ever had to find in my entire life, because no one seemed to knew where it was. So I called, somebody said, no, it's somewhere close in the back by Nawasa. So I called Nawasa, and then the lady gave me the information, and I went there, and actually they were really helpful with me in getting information to complete my speeches, and I really want to thank the staff there who assisted me in doing so. And all players who have assisted me in preparing my speech, looking it over, giving me ideas, giving me thoughts, what they think I should do, what I shouldn't do, if they think I'm too harsh here, I'm too mild here. And I think it was a good effort by everyone. I think it was a good effort, and although the process was tedious, thank God it's over. I really want to say thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Keita.
Honorable Keita Joseph, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, National Security, Home Affairs and Economic Affairs. Thank you so much. We wish you the best relative to your future endeavors. All right.
All best.
Right, so we're going to have a conversation now with Honorable Samaria Charles, member for Calavini. Come right ahead. Yeah, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yes. So, how would you sum up your involvement in St. George's Youth Parliament today?
Well, I would say it was a great experience. I did youth parliament a couple of years ago, like maybe about 2012 around there. And coming back now is a different experience, but I think it's a much better experience because things are a bit different, but different is good sometimes. The preparation was kind of short time, but the reading, getting your stuff together was pretty interesting for me because I've never really paid much attention to the Gaming Act. I've never shown any interest in it. So now having the experience of getting to, basically go down to the nitty-gritty of it was really interesting, and it was a good experience all in all.
Can you give us a sense of your preparation coming into today's event?
Putting my speech together was kind of a bit difficult for me because I have the way of I would have something that I want to say, but not knowing how to get it out there. So that was a bit difficult for me. But then after a while, it was good. I wasn't so nervous as I would normally be because I felt a bit more confident in what I'm saying. So it was okay.
If you had the opportunity to do something over in a different way, what would that be?
To do over.
Relative to your presentation, any aspect of a presentation you'd like to improve?
Maybe being able to speak a bit slower, because I think maybe I spoke a bit fast. That's basically because I was really proud of how I put it together. So I don't think I want to change anything more, but maybe just speak a bit slower. Yeah, that's basically it.
My colleague June Paul is here. Feel free, June.
Good afternoon, Samaria. And let me begin again by congratulating you. If you were to speak to us about was it your first time, or what was it like when you were approached to take part in this debate? Sometimes we persons are a bit hesitant. What was your initial feeling?
I was open to the idea. Mr. Gaskin came and he was like, you probably know. I think I spoke to him about it because I saw it on television. And I spoke to him, I said, I think I want to be a part of this thing again. And he was like, okay, I'll put your name down. And then somebody called me and I was like, okay, sure, no problem. It was no issue. And he was like, okay, and that was it. It was a good experience. I was open to the idea of doing it because I don't have an issue doing stuff like that.
And even on the topic, because many times persons will get a particular topic and they will say, nah, I'm not interested in that topic. With very little knowledge, as you said, or none at all, what was it like after getting the information, putting it together and delivering today?
When I got the resolution, I was like, I'm taking part in this thing again now, because well, myself as a social work person, because I did social work, so I was looking for something of that matter, which is why maybe I focus more on the fact that this act was supposed to protect our young people. So to me, I wasn't seeing any way they're going to protect our young people. Not saying that the act is not a good act. It's okay. But when it comes to our young people, I don't see that was my strong point. So I focused there because I know, okay, these are the things that I can speak about, because I decided to shadow Minister of Social Development and Youth, because I know that's my area, so that's my strong point. So I could, put the 2 points there. However, when, the government came, but I was trying to figure out, okay, what were they putting to the table? What are they bringing to the table to say, we're going to do this to, make the ACA better? They keep saying, okay, they can be amendments, but we're not sure that they're going to be amendments. I was looking forward to hear them bring recommendations, as to what they're going to do. But I didn't really get that. But all in all, it was a good outcome. It was okay for me.
What was it like in terms of participation among your fellow peers prior to today's delivery? How has it been for you guys?
It was really good. We all get along so well. We laugh, we crack jokes. It was really, really good. So now, even when we're speaking about certain things, like during practice, during the sessions and stuff, we laugh and we give out ideas, and you hear everybody voicing their opinions, and so nobody wasn't too on the shy kind of I don't have nothing to say. Everybody had something to say when we were doing practicing. Just how they came out and everybody had something to say. It was the same energy. It was really good energy, which I was really happy about, because I don't do well when I don't like to be around people that kind of dead. I like people that have vibes, and you like to talk and interact. I'm there for that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Honorable Samaria Giles, member for Calavini, thank you so much. All the best with your endeavors. Now, the Speaker of the House, feel free to join us, the Honorable Tariq Frank. After which, we'll have a conversation with Member of Parliament for Happy Hill. Stand by. Yeah, he's already next to the set. Yes, sir. So, in a previous session of Parliament, you were actually on the government side. You were debating a resolution. Today, you served as Speaker in the House. How did you do in your view?
I think I did the best. I did it to the best of my abilities. There may be hiccups here and there in terms of granting persons access to quoting, because it was not necessary. But I still give them the privilege to quote, because of how I know they were doing practicing in terms of being afraid, frightened, not having the confidence to go out to do what they have to do. I still give them that privilege to make sure that they are comfortable, and also to make sure that the proceeding was followed in the best possible way of parliamentary proceedings.
You've been rated for having a lot of control of the House today, having things in order, and having that sort of literal control. Your take on what you've been praised about?
I guess it's based on how you grow up from time to time, being able to know what is right from wrong and stuff like that. But also, I guess, based on your appearance, how people view you, based on how they take you in terms of your seriousness, in terms of that. But I think I did try my best to do what I have to do to the best of my ability. And I also told the honorable members before we begin that they should maintain the decorum of the House. Although it's a debate, they should take it seriously, as I said in my announcement, that the seriousness of the debate should be sedate, in terms of that it should be quiet and in the best possible manner that it should take place.
How has this experience developed the person who is Tariq?
Well, being at the first two sittings, which was January and July, and being the Speaker now, I guess I've developed in a very positive light in terms of critical thinking, but most of all listening, and also in communication, because communication is key, and also being able to listen to understand in terms of if the member is quoting, if the member provides statistics, if is the member clear, and going down that line.
My colleague is here, June Paul. Feel free, June.
Hello, my colleague again, Tarek.
Hi, Ms.
And
June.
let me welcome you again. I just want to find out from you. I know you, and you iterated, Karen, I already did, with regards to your experience in this field. So you are one of the, well, obviously, the seasoned politicians here today. If you were to speak to me about your future goals or your future plans, do you see yourself as one of Grenada's upcoming politicians?
In my view, that's always been my dream and aspirations. Also, my first dream and aspiration was teaching, being a businessman, and also being a politician. So, how I view how you should do politics is engaging people, getting to know people, getting to be with people, understanding how they think, being able to not even sympathize but empathize with them on a daily basis based on what they go through. So I think basically doing these things, I get to meet new friends, get new ideas, and I guess the wisdom builds, and you get to do what you got to do. From here, I would like to go and study in economics with economics and business development. Yeah.
So you want to do a double major or something? Okay, ooh, good for you, man. All the very best. By the way, have you any other question for him?
Yes, I was just going to speak to, well, I'd like to find it from you. You were able to, as Ken Roy said, control and will take control of today's proceeding. You sat there and you listened, you were able to steer the both teams in the right direction. If you were to speak to us now as what you're finding in terms of the presentations and stuff like that.
In my opinion, the presentation today was good. The deliberation was good. There were some hiccups here and there in terms of two speeches being printed and given to the two same members. At the end of the day, I find that it was kind of contradicting that you have to sit down to listen to two persons speak. So I still give her the liberty to say your speech because I did not want to terminate it in any sense, but to give her the privilege to speak in the Honorable House so that she can get the experience going forward. In my view, I thought a lot could have been done in terms of the structure of the speeches, how it was structured, and also that of public speaking in how you deliver your points sequentially and in order so you get that understanding and that rationale of how you should go forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Speaker of the House today, Honorable Tariq Frank. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Same to you.
Likewise. Yes, thanks very much. All right. We have a conversation now with Honorable John Parish, Minister for Youth, Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts, member for Happy Hill. Here he comes.
Welcome, John.
How are you doing? Right. So, in your role today, in your presentation, are you satisfied with the way you performed?
At first, no. Given the mishap that two speeches were printed and I got one that sitting on the proposition side and I got the speech opposing the votes, I was kind of appalled by the eventuality. Then I thought maybe they just wanted a little drama, so spice things up a little. So I went along with the speech, even if I had a copy of my speech in my pocket, and I went along with the speech. Because we were asked to send our speech so they could print it for us, and so I don't know what caused the mix-up or what happened exactly, but I went along and then only to get the same speech being read exactly as I was finished, and I was like, I felt disappointed, but in the end it played out, and when the division was asked and I had to say yay or nay. Based on what happened earlier, I thought it was fitting of me to say nay, and I did say nay, and yeah, that's basically the synopsis.
Is this your first time in a youth parliament of this nature?
First, if you're meaning to ask if this is my first time debating, no. First time in youth parliament, though, yes. To be honest, I'm interested in Parliament on a whole. National level. I would like to be part of it someday. the youth parliament, I think, is a very good gesture by the Ministry of Youth, and I think it's a very good way to mold young leaders. And I think the youth parliament now, and the St. George Youth Parliament in particular, we have members as young as 15 years in school still, and they spoke well. And yeah, it's a very good gesture.
What is your appeal to other young men to get involved in youth parliaments, to get involved in the national conversation on issues affecting them?
As pointed out by Minister Gregory Bowen, the ladies outnumbered us. I mean, it was 400% more. So I think the young men should be involved because yes, we are asking for gender equality and all this, but I think the overpower of women in the youth parliament, St. George Youth Parliament in particular, it's a good sight, but the men should take a stand and be the backbone, so to speak, of the nation. And I think I will advise young men like such as myself to get involved in such programs and to be passionate about governance and governing.
Just before my colleague engages you in a conversation, what do you take away from today's experience?
As I said earlier on, is a learning experience, and the knowledge imparted to me is one of that there's so much to learn, and it's okay to make mistakes. And what really matters though is how you dust off the dust, so to speak, and get up from the pit and move on and try to better your mistakes. Yeah.
John, can you just share with us on your, prior to today's delivery, your preparation, your research, if you was to give us a little insight as to how has it been for you?
It was a little at first I was really hesitant to want to come research about the act, Gaming Act, and to read the act per se, but I did eventually, and it was interesting, and move along, I became intrigued of the contents of the act, and I did learn a lot. I mean, the researching was a little tiring. I mean, I went to sleep like 12 o'clock, and the training, although I missed a few, but I had my reasons, and it was a learning experience, and I wouldn't hesitate to do it again.
Thank you so much for sharing, John, and all the best to you.
Thank you so very much. Honorable John Parish, Minister for Youth Development, Sports, Culture and the Arts, member for Happy Hill. And please welcome now the opposition leader. Yes, Honorable Shawnee Griffith, also member for Darbour. Hello to you. How are you?
Okay, I'm doing just fine.
You're very dramatic, you know.
I'm a dramatic person.
Are you involved in theatre?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Something to consider. You never know. You do have a aspect of theatre about you. You know, the stage. I can see that in your personality. Right. So, again, as we've been asking previous interviewees, how would you sum up your performance today?
I think I won't just say me and my team. We did very well, I think. But there are little ups and downs. You know, a little tension. You get nervous, really, really nervous sometimes. But overall, I think I performed pretty okay.
Where do you think your strength? Where was your strength? And what would you say was your strength?
My strengths were in my speech, I should say. Because when we, in the preparation of this, Mr. Speaker, I still say Mr. Speaker.
No problem.
Yes, in the preparation of the youth parliament, St. George's Youth Parliament, at first it was like, okay, yeah. And then reading the act and thinking about how it affects our young people, how it affects our economy. It makes it gives me energy to come here and, you know, explain and show our community like what is really happening. Yeah, I think that helped me and boost me, encourage me to come and give it my best.
Is it your first time in Youth Parliament?
Yes, it is.
Right. And just before my colleague engages you in a convo, how did you get involved?
The facilitator just hit me up and told me, come, we have a meeting. And I just went and I found it rather interesting. And then when they bring forth the resolution, then I was like, okay, so yes, going well. When I read the act and I compare it to our economy or socio-economic status of certain individual, it was devastating to see that, okay, yes, I can come here and I can show them what is really happening.
What do you want to do with your life as you progress, as you develop as an individual? How do you wish to serve society?
My young age, I wanted to be a medical doctor, specializing in gynecology. Now, I still want to be a medical doctor, but it takes time. It takes time. Yeah, it takes time.
Sean, my question for you. Speak to us about your style of delivery today. I witnessed you stood there. You were very confident. You delivered. Just tell me, what is it that gave you that drive, that energy to make that difference?
I had a very, I should say, important role as an opposition leader. I can't go there fearful, let them know that I'm scared, but I was shaking. My heel was actually shaking in my feet. But I had to give it my best. The knowledge I knew about the topic, the act, everything, I had to just go. And I didn't read half of my speech. Because so much knowledge in the preparation of this. So I just go and give it my best. We prayed before we came here, me and my team members, and we said we just come to do our best.
And what impact, or after going through and hearing from the the government team and you on the opposition side, speak to us about the impact that this session will actually have on your life now.
Well, it's just a show, I should say, but it have a greater impact as to what goes on above us. My sister, Mr. Speaker. I didn't know the act was passed in 2016. I didn't even know the National Lotteries Authority had regulations. I didn't know that. So now, going forth, it drives me to get more information, to know what's really happening. Yeah.
So it's been an enlightenment experience for you, learning of what exists. Yes, yes. All right. Okay, well, thank you so very much, Opposition Leader, Honorable Shawnee Griffith, member for Dabo. Listen, we wish you the very best in your endeavors and light up the world as you continue to journey in this space. All right.
Great job. All the best to you, Shawnee.
Yes, so if you're just tuning in, this is the aftermath of St. George's Youth Parliament, of course, real live at the Grenada Trade Center Annex. I'm here alongside June Paul. Good to see you, I have to say.
Yes, indeed, Kenroy. And I said thank you again, and thank you to the Ministry of Youth for the opportunity. Indeed, it was somewhat no for me, but I think this is just my baptism into this whole thing. So I said thank you again, and I mean, I'm really new to this, but I think going forward, it's like an eye-opener for me right now. And I'm really eager and ready to take on that challenge, Kenroy.
Great, great.
Today we have witnessed another in the series of our National Youth Parliament, the St. George's leg of it. And following this one, on the 29th, we moved to St. John's, that at the St. John's Christian Secondary School, where another topic will be on the agenda, if I should say, for discussion.
Absolutely. We want to thank the Government Information Service for carrying this live session. Also, Mikey Live. Absolutely, he's been so committed to the process. Thank you very much, Mikey Live. And you keep at it. You keep facilitating national development. Thanks to the organizing team, Project Officer Aliyah Sween in the Ministry of Youth Development, the Acting Coordinator of Youth in Grenada, Royden Bahari, the rest of the team there. You've all been absolutely wonderful, very gracious to us, facilitating this process. And so we look forward to many more sessions
like this.
in
And
the
we
Parish
cannot
Youth
forget the
Parliament.
management and staff of the Grenada National Trade Center for affording us this opportunity to host such an event as well.
Yes, Mr. Bido and team, thank you. Thank you so very much. So don't forget, next Tuesday, the 29th of October, there's going to be the St. John's Youth Parliament, and that will be held at St. John's
St.
Christian?
John's Christian Secondary School.
Correct.
Commencing at 4 p.m.
Yes, so we will be back. We will definitely be back to share with you the continued debate among young people of Grenada. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ken Roy Batiste.
And I am June Paul.
Have a good night.